Hey, it's Jose Galison. This is No Way Jose. You can find me on the No Way Jose YouTube channel. You can also find me on all the major podcatchers and on Odyssey as well. Today, my guest is TopLobsta. So for those watching on my Patreon now on the 23rd, this is live stream for you guys. But it's I'm going to be sending this out to basically how this works is it's basically patrons only right now, and it'll get released as a numbered episode in like a week or so. So to get in on that, it's $2 for the lowest tier if that's what you want to do. I will say I do stream it to Twitter, so if you want to watch there, I mean you can do that for free. I don't think it streams it, but it will immediately after it's done, it will go to Odyssey, and so that's free as well. So if you don't want to pay on Patreon, go to Odyssey, because I'd rather you be watching me on Odyssey anyways, because eventually I'm gonna get booted off of YouTube at some point. Somehow I haven't got hit at all. Tower Power Hour has gone a couple times, but somehow I haven't. I'm a little more serious. Maybe that's why. And then like the highest level on Patreon is like if you do the $20, you'll be a sponsor. So I'll read you off. So for example, CD McRae of the Whiskey and Tea podcast, she's a sponsor. Jermaine Vincent, Adam, at Big Boghorn of the No Time to Explain podcast. And also, just so you guys know, my the Patreon is patreon.com, just No Way Jose 2020. Today, the topic we'll be covering is Charles Robert Plunkett, his chapter in the Anarchist Handbook, which is a very Fed posty one. And yeah, with that, let's go ahead and bring. Oh yeah, I mean it's kind of weird. I'm doing this plug now since it's who I'm bringing on. But check out TopLobsta.com. Use Jose at checkout for 10% off. He's the fucking dude, and that's why I have him here. What's up, man?
Yo, what's up, Jose? How you doing, man?
Doing all right, go ahead and introduce yourself. I know most podcasters only do it for the first time. I do it every single time because it wastes time, and that's kind of what we do in podcasting. And also, you never know whose first time it is. So
yeah. So my name is Danny, but I go by the moniker TopLobsta, and you can find my shit at TopLobsta.com. I do a lot of the artwork that you see that some people think is shitty, some people think is great. So check me out. Check out the people I'm affiliated with.
The person who thinks it's the one person who's ever complained about being shitty has confirmed brain issues. So
yes, there seems to be some overlap with brain issues and people who don't like my shit. So draw your inferences.
He literally has a faulty brain. So, take it with a grain of salt. So that's fucked up. So anyways, we're doing the Plunkett chapter. One thing I've been asking for a lot of people is, why do you think I picked you? I'd like to know why you think I picked you. Oh, what's up, Space Cat? What's up, dude? I've seen you on Twitter. Let's just see what's up. But go ahead. Why do you think I picked you for this chapter? Why do you think you popped in my mind?
I'm not sure. I was telling my wife, I said I'm going to ask him that, like, why did he pick me for this? Because this one is like very this is, from what I remember, it's very inflammatory. This guy just went for it, man. I mean, he seemed like he was kind of deeply involved in what was going on, and was, being a little bit tight-lipped about it, but then just wrote this scathing piece that's just like, it's just a scream. It's a 4-page scream about
Roy Jenkins.
yeah. So I'm like, maybe I am kind of, I don't know. Do I come off as a firebrand to you, or like?
Not. I guess I wouldn't say you're like necessarily over a firebrand or Fed posty, but you definitely are. Because the way I kind of see this essay, it does go into political violence, but it also is going a lot into like I see a lot of because I'm seeing a lot of the overlap and a lot of stuff is going on now with like the fascism in this. What's up, Bonghorn Leghorn? But so I know you've been a little bit more apt to, in some ways, I wouldn't say disregard private property, but be a little bit more suspect of what you consider private property. So I see that overlap here, because one of the themes in this is that they're going into how there was political violence, not political, but violence done upon the people by essentially like oil barons and such, which, in a certain sense, they're private, but I mean, he was talking about the Rockefellers, I believe, and we're going to read it here in a second. But yeah, it was there. There was definitely, with somebody like the Rockefellers, like they're not entirely private. So I know a lot of people like us ANCAP types look at this story and might see this as like, oh, look at these disgusting socialists fighting, people who with their private property, they agreed to work for them, blah, 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 whatever. Like, but, I think a lot of people, the wolves are starting to come off their eye and be like, oh, this isn't so clean cut. Like, there's a lot of government involvement here. There's a lot of overlap. And I guess that's kind of vibe I get from you, that you're kind of starting to open up to some of that. I mean, you're very friendly, like a lot of the post-libertarian type stuff. I don't know. You were just one of the names that popped in when I was reading this. There were a few others, like Aaron from Timeline Earth was a name that popped in my head. There's a few.
I'm in good company then.
Yeah.
You are. I guess you are right, because I have been flirting with that idea, not necessarily throwing away private property, but seeing where that line begins, or not necessarily where the line. I know where it begins, and I think we should respect it, but it's at what point should we start to flirt with the rules here? Start to cross that line, because people are certainly crossing the line. And in this specific story that he tells, it seems like the Rockefellers and the National Guard and the militias and the other people, the people who broke the union strike, they cross some lines. I mean, it gets messy, and who really knows what happened, because this is like the 1900s. So
well, 1914 is the date on this.
Right.
I will let you guys know, I don't think you're a history buff. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a history buff. So I'm literally just kind of giving the best interpretation of this essay I can. So don't expect, I mean, if you come at me like, well, in fact, he was wrong here, and it was actually so-and-so who did it, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm just giving lucky. You my...
the people, while you're lucky you're getting like a intelligent, not even, you're lucky you're getting a legible conversation from us two. This is the best we can do. So shut the fuck up.
All right, let's go ahead. It's only like 4 pages, so I figured we'd do a reading, and then we'll chat a little bit after, and then chat a little bit in between as well. Because I mean, we'll kind of between paragraphs and stuff when shit comes up. So if you need to chime in with a comment or whatever, go ahead. But and I will when I feel like it as well. I'll go ahead and start. I'm gonna read the little bit that Malice put in the beginning, because this is like one of my favorite parts of this. Just the whole context of the situation. So like we said, this is Charge Robert Plunkett. The name of this essay is Dynamite. All right. Emma Goldman's anarchist periodical Mother Earth was a clearinghouse for many prominent names in leftist circles. In 1914, one issue was released without her supervision while she had been away on a lecture tour. Though Goldman was more bloodthirsty than her mentor Johann Most or her partner Alexander Berkman, even he thought the McKinley assassination was pointless and a shame, she still knew enough to be careful as to where and when to discuss political violence. As Goldman later wrote, I had tried always to keep our magazine free from such language, and now the whole number was filled with prattle about force and dynamite. I was so furious that I wanted the entire issue thrown into the fire, but it was too late. The magazine had gone out to the subscribers. Here's the anarchist essay that so disquieted even Emma Goldman. So the context of it is pretty legendary.
It's an interesting forward, and I assume that Michael Malice got it right, but from what I understand, obviously this so Charles wrote for Mother Earth for Emma Goldman, but the more I learned about this a while ago, and from what I understand is these people from Mother Earth and like Charles, I wrote down their names. So Charles and a couple of others, the ones that died later on, they were accomplices. Mm-hmm. And they were kind of plotting this together. So, Emma Goldman's a badass, or she's a firebrand for sure. So when she says, what is she? I didn't know that all this stuff about force and dynamite, and she was furious that it printed. I think it's like this is bringing a lot of heat to her publication and to her in general, because these guys, not only did they do this once, but after these 3 guys passed, which we'll talk about, there was another attempt. And I think a gardener in the Rockefellers' mansion found it, and they successfully defused the next bomb. So these guys were fucking crazy enough to try it, fail, and then write an article about it. So she was like, "Yo, chill. Like, we gotta
you're blowing up sec here." Yeah, and a lot of people might see this as her being like a pussy, but it's like, no, like she's just smart. Like, if anything, like they insinuate she's the most bloodthirsty. I know Berkman. Berkman, her longtime lover, like basically like her lifetime lover, they never got married. But Alexander Berkman, I think he did prison time for some assassin or some attempted or actual assassination. I believe that might have been the McKinley one. I don't remember the exact situation, but he did prison time, and it was well. I remember I read some book about Goldman forever ago, and it was heavily insinuated she was heavily involved, but it's just kind of never really got, they never really got her essentially. So yes, I mean, hell, it was I borderline insinuated a few times she might have been damn near the mastermind. So like, yeah, Emma Goldman was a badass. I mean, in some senses, I think like if I remember correctly, I don't know the entire situation, but I know the one assassination they planned. From the little bits I know, it seems like she was kind of off. I mean, she was definitely a bit more of a socialist in that like private properties, like, violence type shit. And not even like the kind of understanding we're hinting at where it's like, might be like a little bit of a spectrum and like kind of the merger of corporate and state. Like, no, she just didn't like landowners or property owners.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's wild. Well, all right, let's get into it more unless you got something else to say.
Keep going.
All right, it had to come. It was a logical culmination of events. The past 5 months have witnessed a period of anarchist activity in New York City unequaled in this country since the stirring days of 1880 in Chicago. Also, and consequently, they have witnessed unexampled police brutality, court persecution, newspaper slander, and popular prejudice. The end was inevitable. I remember I underlined that when I read that last line. Not the end, it was inevitable. The one before that, the police brutality, court persecution, newspaper slander, and popular prejudice. And I put a little note that said like now, because I do, you kind of, I mean, obviously you can kind of always play, you can. It's kind of like when people read Revelation and they're like, well, that's just like today. This is this and this. You can kind of always interpret it to fit your things. But I feel like you definitely kind of see that now. And I think a lot of you guys listening, you'll probably see while reading this that there definitely is hints of things we're seeing now. And I think things we may see.
Yeah. History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme for sure. So they're talking about Louis Ling in the 80s, in the 1880s there in Chicago, I assume.
Yeah.
And yeah, an interesting thing, like you're saying, the brutality, court persecution, newspaper slander, popular prejudice, they're doing this to conservative right-wingers. But I mean, I'm not saying that it's justified back then, but this, there were bombs going off and there were like body parts flying and shit like that. Like it was real. Now it's a complete paper tiger, and they're rehashing the same technique, but there's no moral justification. So I wonder if that will change things this time around. Yeah, make people more sympathetic to who they're targeting, rather than as you'll see, these anarchists were. I don't think that they're very good people.
Yeah, I mean, I read this and I in my head I could see the moral justification to where it's okay. And it's kind of, I've talked about political violence in my show before. I always like to use the situation of like a cop. Like if you get pulled over by a cop or some shit and like he tries to take you into jail, like I'm of the opinion you're perfectly morally justified in fighting against that kidnapping and doing whatever you have to do up to and including legal or lethal force. Is that smart? Probably not. You're almost certainly not. Like you're probably going to get killed. If you survive, you're going to be hunted down by a gang that has a network nationwide, worldwide, that all want you dead and will probably don't even want to bring you in, or probably going to try to kill you. So like, because you're a cop killer now. So is that smart? Probably not. And that's kind of what I see when it comes to like anarchists and political violence. Like, I get it. Every man has their point, but generally speaking, it's usually not smart. Like I know everyone says, "Oh, if the cops come to my house, they're going to take my guns. Fuck them. I'm going to fight them." Blah blah blah. They'll find my Roomba fucking Claymore or whatever. It's like, okay, well maybe if you're just some single guy who wants to go in a blaze of glory, but most likely this is just dumb. And even if you are the single guy who's going down a blaze of glory, you're probably not helping your cause. Really, you're actually probably making things worse. That's kind of how I look at it. Like you're just going to give them something to point to and go, look at these violent heathens, it's just not going to work out. Yeah.
One thing I think that I'll probably keep bringing up is the tools that are used So obviously they're using their own form of propaganda, but it's not as widespread as what we can do now. And then their secondary form would be dynamite. But in today's age, I wonder if like, I don't know, so if is social media or what we're doing right now more effective than dynamite? And I think that remains to be seen. We'll figure that out in the future.
I think so, although I think there are benefits to both.
Well, yeah, you stay alive and don't do any major crimes.
It began in the stormy days of February with the revolt of the unemployed. Well-fed, I don't even know the fuck to say this word, Pharisaical, whatever the fuck, clergymen and their smug, self-righteous congregations rudely awakened from their fatuous dreams of 17th century theology by hordes of hungry men demanding food and shelter, mass meetings and demonstrations, the greatest ever held in New York, at which thousands of workers listened to and applauded the speeches of avowed anarchists. The black flag of hunger, borne by ragged, starving men through the residential street of the world's industrial potentates. The city stirred, the country aroused, the pillars of capitalist society shaken. Hunger had become articulate, misery had found its voice. The authorities, deaf to the groans of starvation, quickly gave ear to the first murmurs of revolt. 192 men arrested at once for seeking food. Frank Tannenbaum sentenced to practically 2.5 years in jail for declaring that a hungry man has the right to eat. Meetings forcibly broken up by the police. Working men clubbed, arrested, and jailed for expressing their opinions. And they ask if we believe in violence. I circled black flag of hunger in there. I just thought that was a really cool way to put, like, to express anarchy in the context of a collapsing society. And I also put in the margins, I put to come, because I see, especially a good example of this. I just saw a post before we did this that was talking about how truckers for initially, apparently, Reed corrected me, I haven't read the article. Apparently, they were talking about when they said borders, they meant international borders.
Yeah, Canada and Mexico.
Yeah, when I read it, I think they said state borders in the post. I never read the article because, I mean, why read the article when you read the title? But apparently in it, I thought they were meaning like states, but they were basically requiring truckers to get the vaccine if they were crossing borders. But they were talking about international borders. But even then, even though it's not state borders, it's still an example of, how that, trucks bring us everything. Like, aside from like international stuff, it's going to be planes and ships. But so far as like stuff within your own continent, which is the majority of your stuff, all trucks. Now with all these like different vaccine mandates and stuff, we're looking at some shit. And like, we may not see it now. These things usually have a tendency to lag. But if they keep dicking with the supply chain like they are, there's going to come a point where they can't handle. Like, a lot of people remember during the lockdowns, like in a lot of places, like there's like no bacon in the shelves. There are weird things that just wouldn't be there because certain supply chains were just getting completely fucked. So we're doing it again. We're dicking with it again. If we keep it up, we may see the black flag of hunger return, which I thought that was an interesting way to put it, because it's kind of like, in a sense, you create anarchists by completely fucking them, which I feel like in some ways is bad. It's almost like you're creating this artificial anarchist that's only out of desperation, and it's like you're almost creating a dangerous man. But I just thought it was an interesting concept. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So I was telling Josh yesterday that I think the default setting for the human beings is liberty or individualism. So if you do starve a man and you do it on purpose, if you take away everything else that he has, his default setting is then to embrace this radical individualism. And that's the weird part about this. Like, they're clearly doing this on purpose. But why would you do it on purpose unless you're intentionally fomenting a rebellion? Like, they want these things to pop up because they're probably prepared to stop you right away. There's no reason to, when we have supply chain issues as it is, there's no reason to continue and create more of these supply chain issues. Whether it's just, it's just like stuff from Canada and stuff from Mexico that's coming across borders. But why even do it for what's going on now? And then it's also something to think. I was thinking, like, I don't know, Canada's mad cucked anyway, so everybody up there is probably vaccinated. So what the fuck's the point of this rule? Maybe it's just another flex.
We got Mexico though, so that's half the equation. Mexico has been pretty based on a lot of shit, from my understanding. So, I mean, whether their government's based or not, it's one thing. But like, I know that people don't give a fuck. So for the most part,
I don't know.
So.
Mark was saying everybody wears a mask, so I don't really know.
I'm talking on my ass. Mark would know better than I would. God, what did you say? Oh, you said something there about like intentionally. I think there's always a discussion of whether government is evil or incompetent, and I always say both. Like, so I think it's a bit of both. You're going to have people who are incompetent people within the government that is like partially these things that are being created is out of incompetence, but there are smart people who understand what's going on and do kind of manipulate things. And I do think to some extent that's kind of what I was getting at earlier with like, you know, it's not always smart to do political violence or this or that, because there is something to maybe they are intentionally antagonizing things. So it's kind of like they're trying to get you to do it. You know, it's kind of like any dude who's ever been in a toxic relationship with a woman has had that situation of where they're like, hit me. And you're like, no, you can't hit her. Like she's goading you.
Look at me next to all this drywall.
Oh my God.
Just want to smash me through it.
But yeah, so I mean, it's obviously like a game that if, you know, like if you fuck that up, like you're going to complain and be like, oh, well, they goaded me into doing it. It's like, no one's going to give a fuck. You're the bad guy. Like the end.
Yeah, January 6th. That's all you have to see. Nothing happened. Nothing happened, and that day will live in infamy. And everybody involved, they gave the Buffalo dude 40 months. You know, that's fucking crazy. They gave, I think, Eliza Blue just posted, they gave some pedophile 20 months, and he was just like trafficking children or watching child porn. That's where they're at in the scale of punishment. So this is intentional. It's meant to provoke you. They have the facilities in place. They're probably watching this.
Yeah, probably.
So, yeah, just tread. I don't know. Tread carefully, or choose your next move. Your next move wisely, because this is not the 1914s or 1910s, and you can't just make a fucking bomb and get away with it. Like these guys did multiple times. Apparently, it's crazy.
Tyler Jank of Libertarian Podcast Review. We are reading the entire thing.
His name is Tyler Yankee. I was told before.
It's Jank.
Jank? Okay.
I don't know. I'll call him whatever I call him. Yeah. All right, let's keep moving. Then came the Massacre of Ludlow.
Wait, one more thing.
What we got? One more thing. Go for it.
Yeah, because you know they talk about he's talking about the starving men through the residential street of the world's industrial potentates, and I don't know if that's if. I think he means metaphorically and probably also actually literally. Like, you know, it's back in the day. These people are probably hungry. But all throughout 2020, when they closed down people's businesses and they locked you in your houses, then they put the mandates on you. And even till now with the vaccine mandates and all this bullshit, you look around and you know, Pete Quinones said it multiple times. Did you hear his podcast with him and Eric July where they were just fed posting like a motherfucker on that podcast?
This was a while ago, wasn't it?
A while back. It was probably 2020.
I watched pretty much all of Pete's episodes, but I have not seen that one. I don't recall that one. I have seen it. I guarantee you I've seen it. I just don't recall it.
They went as far as like, I mean, they were just like, hey, you know, at this point, everything's off the table. And they're probably right, because that's where we're getting to anyway. But one of the themes that always comes up is like, look at these conservatives, look at the Trump supporters, right? Everyone's 2A, everyone has their AR-15 and shit like that, and nobody uses it. And I think even Vin Armani said, you're not gonna use this. You're not gonna. It's like they don't have to take the guns away. And in a sense, he's right. But I think that they're missing a crucial part of this math equation, and that equation is food. You know.
Yep.
All throughout 2020, we had our Netflix and we had our fucking fake food. You can go to McDonald's. I just went to McDonald's today. Whatever. You go to McDonald's, you can fucking eat your bullshit for $3. You're happy. You're fat. You're in a coma, and then you're entertained. When that goes away, what happens? And it seems like the powers that be are working their best to really just take, you know, one domino at a time, one Jenga piece at a time, and seeing how far they can go before this thing topples.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Yeah, I have no idea what they have planned. I don't even
Yeah,
know.
I don't.
They probably have no idea what to do next. It'll probably just collapse and shit go crazy and
I
no
mean, I
point.
don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't normally get too conspiratorial. I am very much like I do think to some extent some of this was planned. I don't know how much of it, because whenever it comes to central planning, it's like how much can you really plan? But I mean, there's been a lot of stuff I've seen of like plans from years ago where they've been pretty on point. So I'm like, okay, but I don't know.
Well,
We're
Charlie
what?
Robinson wrote a good book called the Managed Decline. The Managed Decline of the American Empire, and he has another one too, like the Octopus of Global Control. But that one kind of explores these ideas that I'm talking about of this intentional downfall of this empire. I mean, even Obama has said that. Yeah, he said. Did he say managed decline? I think he said something in those words. And it's like basically we have to be comfortable not being the world's global empire anymore, because that's obviously that's written on the wall. We know that. We've been screaming it. Scott Horton screams it all day long, but they know it too. So they have to, it's easy. It's either an easy letdown or a kind of like just an assumption of giving away of power little by little. And this is conspiratorial, but I mean, it kind of is reality. We're living through it, and in 10, 20 years, we'll probably be reading the history books about exactly what this was.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean, but it's conspiratorial, but there's truth to it. The problem is though that like you can never really confirm unless you know have some sort of super duper inside details. You can never confirm exactly what is and isn't, because I know it sounds crazy, but like fucking like the international lenders, they fucking run things. Like it's just a matter of follow the money. And the international lenders are going to be the Rockefellers, which is what we're going to begin at in this book a little bit, or in this essay. And, you know, people like that. Like there are big dogs who run shit. There are people who are above nations. There are people that nations go to for money, and they give them money. And these are the ones who are the kingmakers. If they decide at any point to manipulate certain things to take a certain person down, like we saw, he died or whatever, like shit like that, like you're dead. Like if you don't play game, you're done, or some other else take your place. So these are people who can pull these strings, because the politicians on the top know where their money comes from, know who's butters their biscuits, and they know how this game is played, and they're not going to turn against them. So that's just how that works.
yeah.
Read, like, anyone who doesn't believe me, read like the last quarter of No Treason by Lysander Spooner. This was in like post Civil War, and he was already being insanely based on like the fucking like the international lenders and stuff. He was like, these are the ones. These are the ones the most deserving of all the violence, and these are the people in this essay are attacking.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why you chose me for this segment, because I'm not saying I'm Lysander Spooner, but I feel like when you tell me who you are, I listen, right?
Yeah.
No need to tell me twice. I got you. So when people exhibit certain behaviors, it's pretty easy to draw that to its logical conclusion of where they're going with this. And a lot of the libertarians that are like, well, it's private property, this kind of shit, I'm like, they've already crossed this line and they're not going to stop. So let's just draw this to its logical conclusion. Stop it here rather than doing this fight much later down the road. But, this is everyone's content to do it down the road. And another thing I wanted to add, like, yeah, a lot of this stuff could be, like these global banking powers and Rockefellers and the Pissar family and shit like this. But then it could just be like some kind of weird serendipitous mistake. Like, I don't know, an archduke, his driver could make a wrong turn and that will end him up on a street where an assassin's waiting for him. And that'll kick off the next fucking 3 world wars, if you believe that history. So
Yeah.
Who really fucking knows?
Yeah, I mean, there obviously are always going to be freak events that happen, but for the most part, there are definitely, in my opinion, and even then, like, say with something like that, it may just be one of those things where like the powers that be hiding behind the curtain just kind of like, they may not orchestrate it, but they just like, whatever, let it go, I don't care. Like, but they definitely, when they want to, they can have their shit,
Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste, right?
Yeah. All right. Then came the Massacre of Ludlow. 200 men, women, and children of the working class shot down or burned alive by the hired butchers of Standard Oil. Again, it was the anarchists who took up the fight of the workers and brought home the responsibility where it belonged, To the oily murderer who teaches a Bible class on Sunday and roasts alive defenseless women on Monday. My conscience acquits me, said young Rockefeller. We replaced his conscience. We became his nemesis. His well-oiled conscience acquitted him, but we, the militant workers, have convicted him and passed judgment from his own Bible, a life for a life. There's a lot there, just in that one paragraph to pick apart.
I'm realizing more why you chose me from this, but I'm also realizing that I do come off this way online, because if you do talk to anybody that knows me, I mean, my persona online, or like when I'm talking with you guys, it's very friendly. We're joking, and even like my tweets and stuff, they're kind of friendly. But in real life with my friends and family, I am very much this way, like black and white. There's no bullshit, and I'm gonna say like sometimes I'll say the most wild stuff. So yeah, his attitude is a judge, jury, executioner here, and he's seeing what these people do. Their fake religiosity, or the word that you fumbled on, the pharisaical clergymen, like the Pharisees that Jesus flipped their table over these people that were holier than thou.
Yeah, they
hide behind their religion, and while they do what they do here.
Pharisaical, I bet you that's how it's pronounced, but go ahead.
Yeah, and that is pharisaical, yes. Yeah, so it's an interesting perspective that he does take, and I wonder if he's just kind of if he is Fed posting, like, but 1914 Fed posting, where you write it on a typewriter.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you've looked into the Massacre of Ludlow. I'm not a historical buff, but it was my understanding it was a strike that was being done by the oil workers, where they were striking, and
it was a town, yeah.
Yeah,
Colorado,
it was like
town.
Yeah, it was a whole bunch of people, and essentially, Rockefeller sent some people down there to straighten it out, and I think like they kind of his thugs kind of implied, and I think it may have actually been cops, military, something like that. Hired butchers. So his people. So he sent people go down there to go deal with the people striking. And I don't remember the exact details. I feel like, they kind of claimed someone popped some shit off on the one side, but in retrospect, it looked like the oil, people were the aggressors, most likely. I don't know. I mean, it's like, talking history, especially history I don't know a ton about. Maybe I'm wrong, but it definitely looks like they fucking just offed a bunch of people, and they killed a shitload of like women and children and everything.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty wild thing.
Those were like tent cities, like back then, because they would be, I guess, moving along as they might have been running pipe or whatever they were doing. So in this city in Ludlow, it was a tent city, and they were striking, and that's where it's murky from what I remember. It's like so obviously when you go on strike, I don't know if you've been in like a union or something, and people go on strike, you'll have people that cross the line. They're going to work and do that. And obviously there were line crossers, and, the people who are striking don't like that. So it could have popped off there, and it did. They definitely did kill some of the people that crossed the line and continued to work. And then there are obviously agitators that, if I was Rockefeller, I would send in agitators, because they're also on my land, or they're like holding my equipment hostage. I think in the end, when it was all said and done, they lost something like the equivalent of, it was like maybe like $500 million of what it would be today. So it was a big hit to whatever the fuck, to what he was doing over there. So yeah, it seemed, I don't know who started it, and it could just be anybody, because, people are people. The National Guard got involved, and they came and like squashed stuff and just killed a bunch of people, because, they have the actual guns, and and also it seems like Rockefeller has the power of the state behind him, which is also, if we want to draw parallels to today, I don't know, Bill Gates gets a patent for a vaccine, and all of a sudden it's pushed on the entire world. When you have enough money, you can use the power of state to do whatever you want, which is why we should abolish the state completely. But
yes, but I mean, you brought up that he has the power of state, and so I think that definitely does factor into the math of like who aggressed or whatever, because I mean, it's kind of hard and it gets murky when you're talking about someone who has the power of the state behind them, someone who is like a huge oil baron. There is definitely is a case to be made. They have the power of the state behind them to some extent. So, I mean, to some extent, I mean, it is like murky, but it's like, I know, like, it's like, oh, they were holding his land and equipment hostage, but it's like, okay, but is that his land or is that the public's land because he's living off of taxpayer dollars? Like, it becomes, it gets murky.
That was not a defense or justification of Rockefeller. I'm just trying to be as fair as possible.
Yeah.
Something happened, and then that led to other things and other things and other things until ultimately, you know, the state was involved, the National Guard, and I think cops too. Like, you know, it was a mess. It was a fucking mess. And they just went in there and basically lit that town up, and people, what was it, 120 people or 8? The numbers that I read, they're like, it could be 80, it could be 150. Like they don't even care. It was so long ago, like no one's counting.
Oh, insane. Yeah, people don't realize when you're talking about casualties in war in general, and especially wars like any over decades ago or centuries ago, the numbers are going to be insanely squirrely because they just kind of don't give a fuck.
Yeah. Did Stalin say that one death is a tragedy? A million's a statistic. Yeah.
Yep.
Something like that.
I did want to, I really, it stuck out to me, the one line, the oily murderer who teaches a Bible class on Sunday and roasts alive defenseless women on Monday, which I know they're referring to Rockefeller, but it makes me think of a lot of like cops, certain people in the military, stuff like that, because it is very much like you're able to separate these two lives and especially cops, to where like you're fucking over people and you're able to make justifications, but then you're going to go home and you will be the perfect family man. So it is this like, it's kind of this perversion. Yeah, about 40% of the time, 60% of the time, but yeah.
That's right. I'm bad at that.
Yeah. No, I just thought that reminds
me. It reminds me of pastors in general. I mean, holy man on Sunday, and then you're banging your deacon's wife on Sunday night, and not even Monday. You know, this is the state of man. But when you're talking about people like the Rockefellers and these other higher up people, they, especially in this time period where they can use something like Christianity as a facade to hide behind, they're gonna do it. Whereas today, I guess the facade would be social justice. You see it all the time. Most of these people, they don't give a flying fuck about social justice. They use it to further their means. So this is not a surprise. It's just another parallel to today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say it's almost more sinister in the context I was using, because I was actually meaning like people are able to completely like justify the evil that they're doing, like for the state, and be a perfect person, and like legit, almost in a certain kind of way, almost are a good person, like in their head, but they don't realize, because everyone thinks they're a good person for the most part. Everyone makes justifications, but it's like you're doing evil, but you don't even realize it. It's this is the effect the state has, because you do provide justifications why it's okay for the state to do this, but it's not okay for the individual to do this, you know? So
do you think they even get down to that? That's such an interesting thought. Like one of my friends, he was my friend. He's since deleted me off of everything and doesn't talk to me. He's a cop, and I remember a long time ago, before I was exploring any of this, even libertarian thought, forget about anarchist stuff, I asked him if he liked his job, because it's one of the jobs that I took some city tests and stuff. I said, I don't ever want to be a cop. I saw through it. I saw it was like weird bullshit. So I asked him about it, and his answer to me, when I said, do you like what you do? He said, you know, I get to do things like put a new backsplash in my kitchen. And I was just like, at the time, like, interesting. And now knowing what I know, that phrase always haunts me, because it's just like, I don't know what he's doing out there when he's on the beat or on the street or doing these things. And he's not a bad person. I know him for a long time. But when your boss tells you to do X, Y, Z, you do it. And I know he's done it because he's received promotions, and you know he's a good cop, according to his boss. But it's like, at the end of the day, is that what we're worth? A backsplash? This is what we're doing here? And how do you separate that from your family life? Great father, great person, but when you put on your suit, you go and do, there's something really sinister or like psychotic about it. And I don't know whose fault it
Yeah.
is.
It is a wild response. But the crazy thing is, though, I've seen the same thing in the military. Like, I've had friends who try to go like special forces, and they'll just like laugh about like, well, I'll totally like completely like, yeah, those drone strikes that you want to go be, special forces guy and be the one who calls those in. Like, you know what the casualty rate on those? It's like, whatever. And it's like, okay, like, I gotta do cool shit. You're like, all right, man.
Yeah.
Like, and even that, it's funny too because these people I'm referring to, I actually don't see as bad people. Like, but at the same time, like that's fucked up because on a personal level, they're good people. They treat people at good at an individual level. But for some reason, there's just like this, like, I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or they just are like, haha, or they say some shit like, oh, whatever, I'll get a new backsplash. It helps me pay for a new backsplash. It's like, I mean, they're able to, whenever they get this uncomfortable truth, they just have a way to like just kind of shrug it off, like, yeah, okay, or
like
like, okay.
my friend, when faced with it, I still see him in the neighborhood, and he just like he won't talk to me, he won't look at me. But when faced with that uncomfortable truth, they just completely, I don't want to say, I guess he ran away, but aborted the relationship because there is no more recourse or conversation to be had. Once I hit him with some of these the Dave Smith talking points, there is just no rebuttal. The only rebuttal he would have is to say, wow, I'm doing a lot of fucked up shit and I should probably stop. But I put myself in a position where I can't afford this backsplash if I stop. And I'm sympathetic to that too, man, because it's like,
I get it.
What do you do? Yeah. I mean, you're sort of you're in that situation too. And that's like, that takes incredible balls to do. To just walk away from something like that.
Trust me, I hear about it every day from the old lady. But
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it is hard. Like, I mean, I fucking, for those who don't know, I was 11 years active duty military. I got out. I mean, I have a decent job now, but I was getting people always bitch and moan about like how you get paid, but like, or about not getting paid well in the military. I'm like, you get paid well in the military, comparatively speaking. I mean, it wasn't like I was making six figures or some shit, but I'll be straight up, like, shit is like tight right now. Like, I'm like making the ends meet is basically where I'm at. Like, so, but like I could have kept working for the state. I always do like to make the case though that I don't at all see myself as some martyr who's holier than thou and that I did the right thing. I actually legitimately do see this as one of the main reasons why I got out is I saw the writing on the wall, and I think economically and honestly for my well-being in the long run, it will be better. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, yeah, I definitely could have in the short term been better off if I kept going, doing what I was doing, because I would have been able to kept like, because I was doing well money wise. I was fucking putting away a ton of money. It wasn't like I was just paying bills and like I was paying bills and had a bunch to set away. Like, and now I'm at the point where I'm making ends meet. So that's where I'm at now. So I'm not definitely not like poor or anything now, but so I mean but I do think in the long run I'll be better off for my peace of mind and for fucking economically too. So
I
don't know.
I mean, well, now you got to get creative, and I think that's probably a good thing. Because you become complacent. But some of my friends, like one of my best friend, I'm not going to dox him or anything, but he wants to stay at his job here, his city job, and he's like, well, maybe I'll at least get vested, so that's like 10 years in or something. I'll collect a partial pension when I'm this, and I'm like, do you think that there will even be a partial pension? Look at the way this city is run, how completely mismanaged. It's naive for these people to even think that there's gonna be anything at the other end of it. So leaving it completely might be a good idea. What do I know? I just do drawings. So what did that guy say?
Oh, I just bring it up. I wasn't gonna actually read it. So I legitimately have a dilemma when thinking about cops. Some of them treat their families and communities with the utmost respect, but the problem is he says why, but I think he meant what they do with power when it is given to them. And I agree, but that's kind of what I was getting at, to where like the state has this thing where it creates this mental block to where it's like that's what I'm getting at, where they treat their families and communities with utmost respect, but then they abuse power in certain instances as soon as you in their head do something that violates their magical state's rules, and then you're a bad guy, and the end, and that's it. And it's like, and they're not able to at all, go past that. Tyler said, clip this part and ask from our Patreon members. No, I'm trying not to be a pitiful grifter, okay?
Please subscribe.
Yeah. I mean, I probably should, but that's not my style. Yeah, let's move on. Driven from his office at 26 Broadway, from his city home and his pet Sunday school, the world's most potent monarch was forced to take refuge behind barred gates and armed guards at his Tarrytown estate. Having driven the rat from into his hole, we followed him there. We went to Tarrytown. More clubs, more arrests, more jail, more persecution. A dozen men and women thrown into a filthy, stinking jail for speaking on the street. More arrested and clubbed the next day. Jail sentences of 30 to 90 days punished the temerity of the rebels who dared invade Rockefeller's hometown. Finally, finding his town police, his private guards, and special deputies unable to cope with the situation, a hired mob was organized, which, inflamed with patriotism, rural bigotry, and Rockefeller's whiskey, and gratuitously aided by the New York City's authorities, attacked, stoned, and, had not their Dutch courage failed them, would have lynched the anarchist speakers. I put a little note here. For some reason, it reminded me of the Floyd riots, because I know a lot of our kind don't like to admit that it did kind of, to some extent, start out adjacent to anarchist philosophy or ANCAP philosophy, because when it first started, it was legit like, let's go burn down the court and the police station. And for me, I mean, I'm not saying do that, but I'm definitely going to sit there and eat. I'm going to sit there and eat popcorn while you do it. I'm going to be like, that's pretty fucking dope. I mean, I think it's pretty dumb what you're doing, but you know what? Fucking respect. That's kind of where I'm coming from. But there was a point where it turned and it became violent, and a lot of people didn't really, see that. And that's where the public opinion changed. So I got that vibe there. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
It seemed like here was not the opposite, but he hired a mob to counter protest. So maybe the similarities there would be something like Antifa, where I've seen some of the marches in New York. Was it New York or I don't know, somewhere, probably Portland. They're out there marching against vaccine mandates, and then Antifa will come out and march against them, which is quite bizarre and not organic. Or maybe if it is organic, they're being lied to, or like he said, they have their Dutch courage from the whiskey that they're giving them. So people are paid off, and lots of similarities to today.
Yeah. After this, the mask was off. Not content with legal violence, the ruling class itself had first appealed to extra legal violence. None could suppose the anarchists would not accept the challenge. This was the situation in the morning of July 4th. Then came the explosion, starting the country and striking terror into the hearts of the reaction. A large tenement house on Lexington Avenue was destroyed, and three well-known anarchists, Arthur Caron, Charles Berg, and Carl Hansen, were killed. The ruin was evidently caused by a large quantity of dynamite exploding the flat occupied by our comrades. These are the facts. More than this, no one knows and probably ever will know.
Right.
I wrote a little note, but I can't even read it.
So what he's saying is these are the facts. That's what happened. More than this, no one knows. He knows, and probably never will know. He's right, because he won't tell you. He was a co-conspirator with these people doing this stuff, and there were other guys that kind of like stood in the background, didn't want their name tied to it, but it seemed like there was a network of these anarchist types at this time that were kind of really doing this stuff. So, but it's interesting to be able to read this time capsule from a guy who was doing. When I found out that he was involved with those people, not that he was just writing about it angry. Like, we'll write about shit that we're angry about and we'll tweet about it, but very rarely do you see somebody who was actually in the thick of it and kind of telling you that story from their point of view. It's interesting.
It's like when OJ wrote the book later about like, what if I did it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and his editor's like, yo, shut the fuck up because you're on trial. Yeah, this is what's happening here. It's really interesting. And I mean, the explosion, when I read about it, is actually pretty. I mean, it was pretty like fantastic. It blew up. I think one of these guys was just completely eviscerated, and another guy was like thrown into fire one of the fire exits, because this is in New York, so I guess they were higher up, and he was just like his mangled body in one of the exits to the fire. Yeah, what do they call that? The fire exits to run down the stairs from
Fire escape.
Yeah, the fire escape. Yeah, he was just like fucking smashed up in there. Yeah, so they probably had a lot of goddamn dynamite, and I heard that they were getting it from the Russians. So I guess some things never change, huh? The Russian collusion and
Yeah, I see that. I know what I wrote now. I have a horrible handwriting, so I wrote some of the margins to remind me. So I put Fed shit, X, Malcolm, Kennedy, etc. is what I wrote. I couldn't read it because my handwriting's awful. But yeah, it was like part of me when I read that, it was like, that sounds like some Fed shit. Like, you know, like all, yeah, that it blew up because, I mean, don't get me wrong, it could always be some just freak accident, but it always seems like, you know, we see MLK, X, you know, Kennedy, you know, some other people. I'm trying to think of other people, but like there are plenty of examples in the past of when the feds dick around with these influential people that are starting to get a little too big for their britches, and look whose brake lines are cut. You know, like,
sorry,
you know, shit like that. Yeah,
yeah. But you know, that didn't come to me when I read. I remember thinking about like I don't know, terrorists, like, you know, from the 2000s. They were trying to do shit like this, and they were blowing themselves up. You've heard the stories of suicide bombers that just kind of blew themselves up accidentally, not at the location they're supposed to be at. So I was like, it could have just been that, but it served its purpose, right? It scared the shit out of everybody. They didn't have to kill anyone but themselves, and they kind of they made a little bit of a difference there. But yeah, let's
yeah, we're gonna read, and I do have a point where it's like sort of, but not really. Whatever may be the truth of the matter, the police and the capitalist press immediately assumed that the dynamite was being made into a bomb for use against Rockefeller or in Tarrytown. This was a story flashed over the country, and the moral effect of the explosion was as great as if our comrades had succeeded in their purpose, whatever it may have been. I know in this paragraph they're like, "Oh, this is just as good if they did it." I'm like, "No, not really. You didn't take out your target, and all you did was kill yourselves and make yourselves look like the bad guys in a sense." You know, like that's kind of why immediately when I read this, I thought like Fed shit, almost as if like they did that, and then they took the press and then spinned it to be like, "Whoa, look at these fucking crazy anarchists. Let's go get them." You know, like,
I will say I'm kind of regretful that I'm not a socialist, because capitalist press is such a good term. Corporate press is cool, but capitalist press really really drives that home. If we wanted to abandon the word capitalism, that would be a fucking great great way to stay. As a matter of fact, we should probably use that if you want to talk to. I have no interest in talking to the left, so. But if you do want to talk to the left, capitalist press is a great way. CNN is a capitalist press. MSNBC is a capitalist press. You still listen to them? I will say,
for all the people who get uppity about the word capitalist and how the lefties have subverted it, it's actually not true. We subverted it, and they subverted it back, because the original definition of the word, from my understanding, is Marx used it as a pejorative, and it was like a bad thing. It was legit. Like when you say crony capitalism, that was the original definition of capitalism. So and at the end of the day, words mean all that words are is mouth sounds. So they all they mean is whatever they're imbued with the meaning of the user and the person who, you know, takes in the word. So, you know, do with that what you will. If you want to keep using capitalism, cool. I don't give a shit. Like, I use capitalism in certain contexts. I don't care. But if I'm talking to a lefty, I probably won't use capitalism, because I know that's going to trigger them. And I know a lot of people get up and like, well, the original meaning of the word is bull. It's like, no, actually, the original meaning of the word was a pejorative made up by
Too
Marx.
bad Cole. So. If Cole was on this episode, we can talk about the lineage of the N word, how it started off. It started off as a derogatory word, and then it was adopted, and now I don't know really what Cole is using it as, but I like it. So.
All right. As usual, many of the lip revolutionists scurried to cover and hastened to repudiate violence, anarchy, the dead men, and everything connected with them. The anarchists, however, have stood their ground. Although we know nothing of the facts, we do not hesitate to admit the possibility, nor fear to face the accusation that our comrades met their death in an attempt to retaliate upon the violence of the ruling classes in the only possible way, with violence. The immediate thing that came to my mind was January 6th, which you mentioned earlier. because many of the lip revolutionists scurried to cover and hastened to repudiate violence. Which, I mean, you saw that in so many conservative and even libertarian circles, people being like, immediately after January 6th, just bowing to the fucking the cathedral's fucking narrative, to being like, oh, look at these fucking evil fucks. And you're like, just a minute ago you were like completely against all this shit. Like, what is going on? Like, and I do think there's something to that.
Yeah. I mean, well, in the modern day, they saw their opening to cuck to the cathedral and get their spot, like in DC, right, Cato and Reason. So yeah, I know some things don't change. Obviously, one of the things he says here is that they want to retaliate upon the violence of the ruling class in the only way possible, with violence. I think the jury's still out on that. I don't think that only violence is the only way to retaliate. This book, that we're reading right now, I mean, it sold. It was like the number one bestseller on Amazon. This is dynamite in itself to the ruling class. These ideas shouldn't. I shouldn't know who who Charles Plunkett is. I shouldn't, but I do now because of this. So, yeah, what is the Dave Chappelle modern problems call for modern solutions, right? Yeah. So this is probably something that we're going to be segueing into rather than dynamite. I hope.
Yeah, no, for sure. You brought up a good point there. Yeah, I definitely don't think violence is the only answer. I feel like, I'm not going to do that. That's a whole other discussion. But let's move on. If they did, we own them proudly, and we honor them for their intelligence, their initiative, and their courage. They did the only logical thing, the only courageous thing, the only revolutionary thing under the circumstances. When free speech is suppressed, when men are jailed for asking food, clubbed for assembling to discuss their grievances, and stoned for expressing their opinions, there is but one recourse: violence. The ruling class has guns, bullets, bayonets, police, jails, militia, armies, and navies. To oppose all this, the worker has only dynamite. And I know we just a second ago said that, that we disagree with the only possible way. But there is, I underlined one line in here. I put current situation. I do think, the closer, there comes a certain point to where there kind of almost isn't an option other than that. And that's kind of the point. Which you mean to call on, like, say, Stapleton, the wealth, power, and influence. That's why kind of shit like that is important. In the good times, you should be working on getting yourself in the best situation you can be. And I don't just mean wealthy, because I just said earlier how I got out of the military, because you want to also be independently wealthy, like not reliant on any man, as self-sufficient as you possibly can be, because you don't want to be put in a situation to where your only recourse is violence. So you want your best to, not be in that situation as best as you can. So, but here we are now, the crunch is being put on us. So we're kind of in a point to where, I mean, you can do certain things, but the crunch is on. So we're in a bust part of the boom bust cycle. So,
that is a great point, because when you're thinking about these people, I guess this was so that's like turn of the century, and that's right in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, right? So these people, their choices are extremely limited, especially just the regular working class person. It's not like they can pick up and I don't know, sell t-shirts or graphic design or do a podcast, and they don't have these kind of options. So obviously their only option is violence. Where was I going with that?
Tyler backed you up here. Basically said your exact point.
Yeah.
Despite Uncle Ted's desires, our current technological situation helped to level the field and not only depend on dynamite. Yeah, Uncle Ted is super base, but I do have to disagree, because I think he only focuses on the negative of the technological situation. There is a positive as well. So that's my point. But
yeah,
go on.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, that's. Yeah, there. I feel like I lost my point, but their options were extremely limited, whereas ours right now are not. So yeah, it'll come back to me. Let's keep it. It's
kind of like to Tyler's point. You kind of with Tyler's point with technological innovations, the the more options we get, because there is a certain point to where, like, you know, you're pushed so far to where you literally have nothing else to do but, you know, go chimp mode. So
this was the point that I was going to make.
Yeah.
So obviously right now we're not at the point, we're still not at the point where violence is our only option, and technology and other circumstances have granted us that time stay where we could kind of just, we can kind of buy our time a little bit more. We could accept more bullshit. And I guess the reason you chose me for this is because of my stance on when we should say, all right, cut the bullshit right now, because the further along we go, the further we get dragged into this quagmire. So again, I feel like I just lost my point. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here, but yeah. So it's like when people won't say the truth, and I'm not going to say any names, but like, again, like just with the vaccine mandate thing and the private business stuff and the private
Cato
property.
reason, go on.
Well, even other people we know, I know for a fact that they see what's coming down the tube, and they're not saying anything. So you're actually making, like by defending this stuff, you're making your only option violence. That's your option later on. And if you're not brave enough to say something now, I don't know how you're going to do with the violence part. It's not
probably bitch made. If you can't fucking speak now, then you're not going to be able to do shit later. That's for goddamn sure. So, yeah.
Yeah. The only thing saving us is just telling the truth right now.
Yep.
But
all right. All honor to the men who acted while others talked. All honor to the men who were preparing to strike a blow of terror into the hearts of the enemy. They are dead, the last in a long list of martyrs to the cause of human liberty. But there are hundreds and thousands still alive who, inspired by their act, will follow their example with better success. I did underline all honor to the men who acted while others talked, because I do think that's a beautiful line. While I may not necessarily agree with their course of action, the motherfuckers acted. And I do. One of my main points for the past year, it's been how 2020 has been the biggest impetus to get out of theory and into praxis. Whether, no matter what that praxis is, fucking do something, because talking about it ain't shit, and that's kind of that's partially why I got in the military, because in my head, a year ago, or not even a year, a couple years ago, in my head, I was like, this motherfucker is going to fail in 100 years. This whole thing, the American experiment, 100+ years. And then 2020 happened. I'm like, whoa.
10. Yeah, 10 years.
My math was off. So,
yeah.
And that was kind of the point where we were all stuck in theory. We were in this theory land of oh, well, we all know, eventually this thing's going to bust. And the current fiat system is unsustainable and blah, 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 blah. But we never actually actualized of this could happen in our lifetime. And now we're at this point where it probably will happen in our lifetime,
Yeah, 2020, it was like a shock to the system of how fucking crazy people went with just with the money and social circumstances. But then if you look back on it, it's kind of wow, this system was actually really resilient. I was saying before that when they were doing the quantitative easing, I was like, oh, this can't last for too much longer. And that was nothing to what they've done now. 40% of the money supply they printed in the last year, and it still hasn't crashed. So, man, what a beautiful system that deep roots. And it's really, it's hard to take out. I wonder how long it would have taken to actually unroot itself, rather than if we didn't have this one crazy ass year. But yeah, I was wrong on my timeline for sure.
Me too. It was one of those situations where holy shit, I didn't realize I was that right.
yeah, now I'm scared. My friends are coming to me. They're like, yeah, you've been talking about this shit a lot. What's going on? I was like, don't ask me, man. I'm just as lost as you guys.
I did not expect to be this right. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you.
Sorry, I'm so right all the time. Fuck.
Yeah, I did like the line too, where it said that but hundreds of thousands still alive who will follow their example with better success. And that's kind of where we are now. We're literally reading the words of these dead people, and they've inspired us to continue on with their mission. I'll have you read the last. Yeah, I'll have you read the last paragraph because I feel like that one's a little more powerful. I'll let you have that, and yeah.
Off with the mask. This is war. Violence can be met only with violence. If they attack us with cannon, we will attack them with dynamite. And whenever possible, let us attack first. To oppression, to exploitation, to persecution, to police, jails, militia, armies, and navies. There is but one answer: dynamite.
All right, someone clip that and send that to the feds.
Fuck you. Yeah. This was this seems like an emotional. I mean, the whole thing is obviously very emotional, but this is a very emotional ending to this paragraph. It's meant to provoke. It's for the readers, in my opinion. Even though this guy was making dynamite, I feel like there was also a little part of him where he was more strategic, which is why he wasn't involved with the first placement of the dynamite, and he got involved maybe a little bit later on. So yeah, that would be my advice to the people reading this too. Like, read it, understand what he's saying, but I think this is an emotional play to get people moving. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's super based. I definitely don't agree with it.
Yeah. I like the sentiment.
Mega base. I like the sentiment. It's kind of cool. It's kind of like one of those, like, right on, man. It's kind of like with the cop example I gave earlier. Like, like, I will definitely be like, fuck yeah, dude. Hell yeah, give it to the system. But I'm like,
but in the
back of my head, I'm like, that's kind of fucking dumb.
Yeah, you do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll clap. Like it's really base. Stand for your principles, dog. Or whatever. But
yeah,
because that's where the moral justification. That's what I'm saying. Like, that last paragraph, I think they're more is depending on the context, they're almost certainly morally justified. I think the government by its existence is aggressing upon you. So for the most part, you're morally justified. And this is where I'm an egoist, and a lot of people know that. And we're not a big fan of morality. We think it's made up bullshit. And it's kind of where it's like, kind of morality to some extent sort of doesn't fucking matter. Because like here, it's like, cool. I can say morally you're in the right, but it's kind of like, cool, you're fucking dead and you fucked over the cause. So like, okay, cool. Like, you were morally right. What does that even mean? That doesn't mean a whole lot. Like, the end of the day, like, is what you're doing going to serve to benefit your cause and or yourself? Like, if not, then it's like, why are you doing it? And I think generally speaking, I mean, I'm sure we can make a cause that to some extent this benefited because we're reading this. For the most part, I generally think political violence, there's not much of an upside. It's obviously entirely situational. It's a matter of, like, say the free state, say 100 years from now, the free state project's thriving and doing well. And, and the other states are encroaching upon them. I'd be all for them fucking fighting back. I mean, just as I'm all for the guy fighting back against the cop. But I would say with like the free, like if they're in a situation to where they can practically handle it because they've created like a, I don't know, like what am I trying to get at? They're in the situation to where they actually can fight back. You know what I mean? And do it in a positive way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's more just like, is this smart or is it not? And I think I'm of the fan. Most of this chapter is kind of not what they're sort of advocating for, but I get the sentiment. I kind of sort of admire the sentiment, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, like, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I'm kind of glad somebody did it.
Yeah.
It's unwise. Like it's kind of like the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. Like, I'm kind of glad that they did it, but if my son was walking out of the house saying he's going to go attend a protest, I'm like, no, the fuck, you're not. You're staying here. It's something that needed to be done. I mean, Magnus is probably watching this and shaking his head and like, you bitch. It's just like, I'm not doing this. My place is somewhere else. But a part that sticks out to me in that paragraph is not the dynamite and the call to action stuff. It's the declaration of this is war. And with that, when he's talking to his audience, he's telling them mentally, this is war. And I feel like,
off with the mask, this is war, which is kind of poignant for today's situation. But go on.
It's exactly, especially today's situation. I've said it to my wife multiple times, and she's just like, shut up. Like, I don't give a shit. She's trying to raise some kids. But, you know, whether it be the culture war or whether it be politics or whatever kind of laws that they're trying to pass on you, I'm trying to explain to people like, yo, this is actually war. We're at war with people, and it's undeclared because most of us have no idea. They've targeted us. I think Jeremy Kaufman says it, and it's kind of hilarious. And now the New Hampshire, the LP in New Hampshire say that libertarians are the most persecuted minority. They're kind of right. And the sooner we realize that we're at war, and the sooner we realize that, the better, because then you can start to strategize, and it doesn't have to be with dynamite, and it definitely shouldn't be with dynamite, but just the understanding of, okay,
all those battle lines.
Yes, this is what's happening. I'm understanding. I'm seeing clearly. So now I'll govern myself accordingly. You know, I know who's lying to me. I know who is my enemy. And that's kind of extreme too. But understanding who your enemy is, like the latest skirmish with this BLM stuff. And I said it yesterday on Josh's podcast. I'll say it today. I am drawing the line, and I don't care. I don't really care what people think anymore. I'm not differentiating between the good ones and the bad ones. It's like, no, if you want to put that label on you, then that's on you. And I'm just, with a broad stroke, I'm classifying you as the enemy, as people who want me.
All black people?
All black people. No, but these people, you know, if you're going to wear that banner on your chest and you're going to march in this, I don't want to differentiate and have like a personal conversation with each and every one. I can't now. This is, if we're at war, if this group is telling us that we're not allowed to defend ourselves, and you know, they'd rather see my head bashed in with the skateboard, it's very clear my prejudice has to be that I have to discriminate in order to survive, right? Yeah. Because we're at war. So the sooner people realize that, Spike Cohen, the better. And we could start to draw our battle lines and understand what's happening, and then govern ourselves accordingly and move forward from there.
Yeah, to some extent, it becomes a matter of like, I need to start making quick decisions, because when you have so much information being thrown at you at once, you can't just fucking like be like, well, let me patiently, slowly deliberate all the different, you know, like at some point you got to start making quick decisions. It's kind of like a lot of people. I mean, my big account, not big, I was larger. It was almost a 4K account, got nuked, and I got a new account. But a lot of people knew me on there for being a block guy. And like, they'd be like, well, why do you block? But it's because like, I don't have to interact with you. There's no reason I need to interact with you. If I see you as some sort of negative influence in my life, I'm going to cut you out immediately. And, and it's kind of like, well, people are like, well, you don't know necessarily, you might be off. It's like, okay, whatever. I make a quick decision. It's kind of like, but at the end of the day, it's like, I'm making a quick decision with what I have. And we're not talking, I'm just not like with a block or even like drawing enemy lines. We're not saying I'm necessarily going to do violence upon you. So it's like, whatever. Yeah. It's just like, I'm kind of trying to decide who my friends and enemies are.
The way I see it with that is, it's a cost benefit analysis. So if I'm like just walking along and there's some cheese here, maybe I'll eat that cheese. But if there's a clear mousetrap with cheese on it, no matter how good the cheese is, I'll just say, that's a fucking mousetrap and it's not worth the risk. So I just keep moving. Like, why bother with these people? And, you know, I have no obligation to entertain you or take you seriously anymore. I've seen what you did. So I'll just dismiss you out of hand. And I don't know, like I told, I retweeted Scott Horton. I said, tell these people to, he was kind of defending the BLM or the statements Kyle Rittenhouse made. I said, tell them to change their name, do something else. But if you put that on your name, then why would I bother? It's just a waste of my time. It's an instant block.
This kind of reminded me of Sowell, and one of his main points was kind of how like stereotypes are for a reason, and so like
discrimination too. Yeah.
So like you see someone and you might see like, if you see a black person who's dressed in, you know, urban clothes and pants sagging and this and that, like your brain makes instant stereotypes for a reason, and it doesn't mean that person's a shitty person, but that means your brain might make a quick deliberation of like, because you don't really have, it's a cost benefit. Am I really in a position where I should take that risk of like, are you a good person or whatever? And I mean, maybe I picked a bad example because someone's probably gonna clip this and be like, I hate black people. But like, I'm more just saying, like, I mean, the same thing goes for a white dude. If you have a white dude who presents himself a certain way and you just look at him, he just seems skeevy, you and your brain immediately make these deliberations based on limited information because you're like, why risk it? Why? What do I have to gain from this motherfucker? And what do I have to lose? You know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, you know. I'll even take it further. In my field, in like a construction field, which I was in before, if I see a female worker, I won't talk to you.
You had me at female, you leave them alone.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah. Go on.
Well, if I see a female worker, I'm not gonna like, I mean, unless it's like pertaining to the job and you need to know something about what we're doing, like what kind of track we're putting down. Besides that, I'm not making small talk with you. The upside of making small talk with you is, I don't know what I get your phone. I don't want your phone number. I'm married. There's no upside to me. The downside is maybe you report me for harassment. So how about I just do none of these things unless you have like a pressing question about what we're doing pertaining to the job. That's discrimination, but it's to protect myself. So the sooner we start applying these methods to almost everywhere, the better.
Yeah. No, that's a great example. Like, I mean, when it comes to women, there's so many. I mean, unless we have some amazing like chemistry, like friendship wise, it's kind of like, why? Like, I have nothing to gain from you. I mean, maybe it's just a man mindset, but I'm not out here looking for friends. I don't give a fuck. Like, I genuinely don't. If we get along and they're great, that's cool. But I have no need for friends. I'm a fucking grown ass man. I have a family. I don't need shit. So like, you gotta be bringing something to the table. You gotta have a great personality, something. So there is definitely, it's like, what do I have to lose from here? What do I have to gain? And so, yeah, but we kind of went off the weeds there. But do you have any other final thoughts before we close out?
No, I think we covered it. But yeah, I think that's a good point for people to hear, man. That's like, you know, Andrew would love that. That's we're talking about the incentive structure of what motivates us. So you know, follow your incentives. Don't be stupid. Understand what you want and what you want to do, and then move that way, rather than if you're trying to please everyone or please a crowd, and that's just going to get you jammed up, or it's going to get BLM to Dave's next comedy show. That's really how that ended up. You know, us trying to placate to that it ended up with a possible death threat on our Lord and Savior Dave Smith.
They backed off immediately. Did you see me fucking with them? I was fucking with them hard. I mean, I don't have as much of as big of account as I did before, so it doesn't show up as your timeline as much. But I was fucking with them hard because I don't know. They completely backed off of Dave because their fucking play was make veiled threats, and as soon as someone called them in their veiled threats, like not scared at all, then they backed off like, oh well, we didn't really mean that, we meant this, and you're like, okay, well, you just sound stupid. Because like the finna pull up thing, they backed off that. It's like, what are you threatening then? To show up and protest? I don't give a fuck. Like, that's pitiful. That's a joke. Like, oh like no, there'll be 10 people more yelling outside my event. Like, who cares?
They were bringing up something about the Second Amendment, and I'm just like, you know, I don't know. I was at Porkfest, and I mean, you can. It's just, but the question is why. Why would I even fucking bother with these people? Because that's where you end up. When you can very easily say, I don't like the movement you're attached with. I don't like that I hate New York, but I don't like that this city's burning. Specifically from that movement you're attached with, I want nothing to do with you. Yeah. That's fair. That's fucking fair because I mean, again, look at where this leads to unnecessary bullshit conflict. So I don't know. Like Andrew
been killing the comments tonight, by the way. Two of the best, great episode, guys. And then this one's Pence type energy keeps you married. 100%.
Goddamn right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have no desire. I don't need women friends. I know, call it sexist if you want. I don't need women friends unless you have something amazing to offer me personality wise. Generally, I don't need friends. Period. So I definitely don't need friends that's gonna and somehow threaten my marriage in any way, shape, or form, even possibly, even a modicum of a possibility. Like, I don't need that. Like,
I think that's why me and you are friends, because I say this all the time. I have like one friend in real life, and then if I move away, I'll have zero friends. And I was like, I told my wife, I don't need any fucking friends. I got a lot going on. But I still got Jose, so we're good. I mean, I guess we're not friends because we don't need friends. So we'll call each other something else.
We're anti-friends.
You're goddamn right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't give a shit. Like, I have no problem. I don't know. I go to work, I come home, and I mean, I have internet friends, so whatever. Maybe that, I guess you could probably interpret as being pitiful and I have to have internet friends. But at the same time, like, if I didn't have internet friends, I still wouldn't give a shit. I don't know. It's just how I was raised. You're a man. Yeah. You don't have feelings. Move on.
There's a lot of porn on the internet. So I mean, we could do other stuff.
I could always find some project to do. Like, I don't fucking know. I find something to do with my mind and or hands. And there you go. I don't need a friend.
Honestly, if I had less internet friends, I would probably get more drawings done. But you know, you guys impede me.
Yeah. You want to go ahead and drop your plugs?
Yeah, man. TopLobsta.com, TopLobsta_ on Twitter. You can get this War is Mass Murder, Conscription is Slavery, and Taxation is Robbery Rothbard t-shirt, among many others. You can get Jose shirt on there, which we have to work on a way to get a store set up for you guys. But you're dragging your feet. I don't know. Whatever.
We like giving you money. We like you.
Yeah, I like you guys too, but whatever. We'll figure it out. So yeah, you can catch me on all those places, and I might be on tomorrow with Josh Smith. I think he's having like this big round table with Reed and Chase Geyser. Scott Horton might show up, and a couple other people. So that should be pretty cool.
What topic? That's just a random grouping of people.
Break the cycle. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but I kind of want to say hi to Scott Horton. So
okay. Yeah, have you not met Scott in real life yet?
I saw him in Tom. Remember the Tom Woods thing?
Oh yeah, it's right. Yeah.
But there was like a line of people, and I had a shirt for him, so I was just like, Josh was there, and I was like, "Yo, skip me in," and he skipped me in, and he gave him the shirt, and I was like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Oh, you're the TopLobsta," and I said, "Yeah." So he gave me a hug, but I was like, "All right," and I bounced because there's people waiting, so. I didn't really get to meet him, but he seems like a nice guy.
Scott's the dude. Yeah. I mean, I met him at the Florida LP convention, and we may or may not have partaken of some grass. So, yeah, he's I think my first interaction, like, oh my God, you're Scott Hart, and that's cool. He's like, hey man, you want to hit this? And just like kind of handed me a bong.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But no, Scott's the fucking dude. It was very surreal meeting him. He's a great guy. I was gonna say, yeah. With that, I am the No Way Jose show. This is I'm on YouTube on the No Way Jose YouTube channel. I'm on all the major podcatchers, Odyssey. My Twitter is now, I think, at 2020 No Way Jose, because it's not at Gali San Jose anymore. Go follow, or not follow me, but support me at patreon.com. So it's No Way Jose 2020. They will have access to these streams. And like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good shit. Appreciate you coming on, dude. Hang out for a second. I'll end the podcast and we'll shoot the shit. Boop. See you guys.